I'm Teresa Carraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. Today I'm reposting a video that I did over 2 years ago, around when I first started my YouTube channel. I was reminded of it because it's about Jonathan Haidt and the interview that Russell Brand did of him. He's the author of The Righteous Mind. Jonathan has recently jumped on the bandwagon to associate those standing up for Palestinian sovereignty with woke ideologies and political correctness. One article on this is NYU Stands Up to the Israel Haters. Using the biblical motif of flipping the heroes and the villains, the victims and the oppressors, what this article does is present universities as hotbeds of the epidemic of politically correct thinking and ideological conformity. So my youngest daughter studied Arabic at her college for 3 years, and so has many Muslim friends, and she can tell you exactly how opposite to reality that is. I think we could also look at how 35 different states have now become part of this anti-boycott legislation so that they will not do business, cannot legally do business, or invest in any company that's boycotting Israel or even just the occupied territories. So does that sound like systemic anti-Israel bias to you? This seems to be a strategy that I'm noticing. Another example is Greta Thunberg holding up her Stand with Gaza sign and backed by an octopus plushie, which she has since cut out of the photo saying, "I didn't know that it was anti-Semitic." Of course, genealogists have pointed out that she is a Rothschild great-grandchild, but I'm sure that that's just coincidence. So if you're a steel ball in this pinball game, you'll recognize that you have just been jettisoned back into play from the faux right flipper. You can now light up all those high-value, anti-woke, pro-Palestine rage targets, bouncing off bumpers until exhausted you fall back down. But never fear, if you have any fight left in you, one of those flippers will give you more targets to attack until you reach the end of your life. Game over for you. I think that Jonathan's book should be called The Self-Righteous Mind because what he does in the social experiment that Darren Brown quotes is he associates qualifiers that are judgment calls and make things good or bad depending on his pre-existing biases. So that seems to me very similar to Jordan Peterson, and I'll be talking about that in this video. But I think there's another reason that this video is apropos to bring back now. While I've been talking about why I don't think that Russell Brand is a bad person, I haven't been talking about what's good about him and what has made me so attracted to his message. So why would I, of all people, be defending a disheveled sexaholic, has-been, once was actor? That's not the kind of thing that typically I'm into. I am not someone who is drawn to celebrity. I haven't lived with a TV for the last 30 years. I don't listen to crude humor. I can't even name the name of a comedian. So what is it that has made me pay more attention to Russell Brand than all other famous people put together? In this video, I talk about how the reason that I wrote my book is because I couldn't find even one person who agreed with one of the 5 positions that I had come to in my research and in my reflections. And those 5 positions were: 1, people are equally good; 2, when people behave badly, systems are to blame; 3, systems can be changed. 4, all communities are equally capable of self-governance. And 5, a suspicion that it's possible that we are not separate people but one mind. So to my surprise, Russell is consistent on all 5 of those, both in terms of his arguments and also in terms of his interpersonal relationships and how he treats other people. These are points that he comes back to again and again and again, no matter who he's conversing with. So when I started my YouTube, I called it Yes and Russell Brand, because it wasn't a fan video and it wasn't critiques. What it was saying, okay, let's take this as a starting point, a foundation, and then I can build from there. I can build my arguments because I've got someone who has agreement on those core principles. But even if I didn't have those core areas of agreement, I would still die on this hill. I would die on this hill for you. Whether I agreed with you or not, if I saw someone who was doing ad hominem attacks on your character and bringing in things that were unrelated to what you were saying and what you were doing, I would come to your defense. I've done it before. I became a primary spokesperson for someone in my town who I completely disagreed with, a politician who represented positions where I was on the other side and had told him that when he came to the door campaigning. But what they were doing to him was unfair. It was making attacks that were tricks and were using these knee-jerk reactions to be able to turn public opinion against him. And so I became a spokesperson showing how those tricks were being used, even though I disagreed with him. In my video, I analyze a video by Natalie Wynn, who does Contrapoints, called Envy. And Natalie Wynn is a transgender woman who has a PhD in philosophy. And so she does some really interesting, edgy analysis that also uses costumes and makeup and stage sets. So I find it very interesting myself, ever since my youngest daughter introduced me to her. And in this one, she uses things from SpongeBob SquarePants and Squidward in particular, going to Amadeus, and looks at how envy is different from jealousy. Because in jealousy, you want what the other person has. But in envy, you resent the other person for having what you do not. You want them to not have it because you don't have it. That's an entirely different thing. So I look at, this was during the middle of the lockdown, how much of that moral virtue signaling was driven by envy, was driven by the idea of tearing other people down. The joy police were out in full force. So when Natalie looks at someone like Amadeus or SpongeBob SquarePants and their libidinous, spontaneous joy and the way in which the moral reprobation against them is really driven by envy, I think there is a parallel here to Russell Brand. I think it's the morality police that are out. And if I was Natalie, I would be doing this with a scarlet letter, emblazoned in lipstick on my chest, because that's the kind of thing that I think is happening here, that we're not focused on what is this person actually saying and why is it that there is this sudden witch hunt. Instead, we're taking that at face value, and I think that that's driven by envy. I'm Teresa Coraggio, and this is Third Paradigm. In this episode, I'm going to be responding to Russell's interview of Jonathan Haidt called Understanding Our Divided Realities, and also with Darren Brown, looking at truth and illusion. My perspective is going to be there's only one deadly sin, and I use sin as an acronym for seeing inferiority. So I'm going to look at things from that perspective. And let's get started. My daughter Cassandra has a very provocative question. She asked, what's your go-to deadly sin? In her case, she says that sloth trumps gluttony because even if she's really hungry, she's too lazy to get out of bed and fix something. In my case, I think it's envy. Usually around, why does that person have an audience and why don't I? One person who's helped me really come to terms with that feeling, who really deserves her audience, is Natalie Wynn, who does Contrapoints. Contrapoints has been a source of great conversations between Cassandra and I, who introduced me to it. In this latest episode, she looks at envy. And she makes a distinction between jealousy and envy, where she says jealousy is feeling that someone else has something that rightfully belongs to you, whereas envy feels if I can't have it, no one should. I think there's also a relationship between envy and Schadenfreude, the German word for taking pleasure in someone else's misery. And envy, as Natalie defines it, is being miserable about someone else's joy. I think that both of those were at work during our year of COVID, that there was a sense that suffering was a zero-sum game, and that if you were not doing your share of suffering, you were inflicting more suffering on others, and that if one person couldn't be happy, no one should. So I want to look at how envy plays in to what Natalie looks at as the evil eye. She goes back into medieval times and looks at witch hunting and their relationship to envy and the sense that someone had turned the evil eye onto you. And how looking at the evil eye being turned on you was meaning that you were going to turn it on someone else. Another symbol for warding off the evil eye is the hamsa. And this is what is on my shirt. It's the eye inside of the two-thumbed hand, and it joins perception with action. All 5 major religions claim this: Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism, even though archaeology shows that it predates all of them. So what it looks at when it's in the upright form in particular is that it wards off not just negativity coming from others to you, but also negativity within yourself and negativity from yourself towards others. I want to look at that in terms of the perspective that I feel like I share with Russell. And so there are 5 different points that I look at that are these outlier opinions that have given me really the impetus to do this YouTube channel, because I think it's very hard to find someone who agrees with even one of those. So I've been very excited to find Russell agreeing, I think, with all 5. So those perspectives are: 1, a belief that all people are equally good. 2nd, following from that when people behave badly, systems are to blame. 3rd, that systems can be changed. As David Graeber says, we made them. We can make them differently. 4th, that all communities are equally capable of self-governance, which also follows from the concept that all people are equally good. And then the 5th, I would say, as entertaining the possibility that we are one mind, that minds are joined, and that the world of perception is something that starts in the mind. So looking at this left-right debate that Darren and Jonathan talk about, from that perspective of those 5 points, where does that lead us? There's a study that Darren quotes that comes from Jonathan's book, The Righteous Mind. And in it, they test the different parts of the brain that fire up with different images. And they find that people who have a left ideology will light up parts of their brain when shown images of, say, puppies and kittens. And they term that compassion. And then on the right, they find that parts light up when they show images that invoke fear, things like witch hunts. And so what they're looking at is that these things can also be altered, that if you take someone who has a right ideology and you give them a feeling of invincibility, that they then move towards the left. And if on the left you induce feelings of disgust, that they move towards the right. And so in both cases, these are things that are circumstantial. But my point is that we're assigning words to them that are qualifiers, that are not neutral, and that would be perceived as insults if someone used those towards us. So I think we need to go deeper into what it is that's motivating us. As my daughter Cassandra says, you are the only one that can identify your own deadly sins, your own way, in my words, of seeing inferiority. So what is it from the left that makes us light up with pictures of puppies and kittens? I mean, surely, that also has appeal to people who are on the conservative side. I think there's a way in which we are both trying to care for each other, trying to care for the people who have been entrusted to us, and trying to care for the larger world, but that both of those are things that are good and that are healthy, and that maybe we need to have that sense of invulnerability, at least in terms of feeling secure, feeling safe, along with maybe not feeling so much guilt. So my daughter Veronica says that in her generation, there's many people who have decided that they can't afford to have kids, that it's too much responsibility, that it feels environmentally very selfish, very greedy. And so many are turning away from that as a life choice. And instead, they are putting the energy that they would put towards kids towards pets. That's become where we can project our love. And I don't think anything's wrong with that. But I also don't think there's anything that's particularly more right about that than projecting that onto how can we take care of our own families. And so in both cases, there are real things at work. We're all feeling guilty about what we are not doing. And at the same time, we're feeling fearful for what's being done to us. So we can overcome, I think, both of those only by looking at that third eye in our mind and projecting onto everything the good qualities that we will hope to see in ourselves. So my hope is that, as Jonathan quotes from William Gibson, that the matrix is our consensual hallucination, that we can improve this hallucination and make it one in which we can bring all of that love and safety and security and ward off the envy and the evil eye in order to make this into a wonderful hallucination for all of us in which we all live long and prosper. Thank you. As I say in the video, envy is my go-to deadly sin. But it's not envy of Russell's promiscuity, which is not part of his character at this point anyway. It is envy of that audience. And that's the envy that I always have to fight in myself and say, am I disliking this person because of what they stand for, or because they have an audience and I don't? If you would like to get more into that analysis of envy, here is Natalie Wynn's 100-minute video, which is addictive, just to warn you. And then this is my playlist on the left-right divide. Thank you for watching.